Hi, and welcome to Awkward Family Conversations, an intergenerational discussion of topics of interest mainly to millennials and Gen Z Zoomers. I am joined, as always, by my daughter, Addie. And we talked, I don't think we've talked about your Lindsay wildlife experience. I mean, when she was younger, in her tweens and teens, Addie worked at the Lindsay Wildlife Experience, which is a world-renowned museum just here in Walnut Creek, California, with lots of animals. And so she brought in, she would bring animals home, and she would handle venomous, poisonous snakes and spiders
It didn't handle anything poisonous because poison is transferred through the skin, so that would be dangerous. I did handle venomous spiders, did not handle venomous snakes.
Excellent. Well, and you brought home annoying animals like guinea pigs that would squeal and carry on. So
they were so cute.
And did you name a pair of them?
Yes.
So
Chip and Dash.
Yes. So anyway, Addie's love for animals goes back a long, long way. And she had for 5 or 6 years, I think, she was working at the Lindsay Wildlife Experience as an interpretive guide through their program. And I think she enjoyed that very, very much and led perhaps to her current career. Hello, Ed.
Hi, Dad. All of this is true. All right. I'm here with my father, Rhett. Who, again, kind of a short follow-up trivia from last week, speaking of friends, his college friends who came up a couple times call him Tony for reasons that they don't tell anybody. We just know that he's Tony to them.
Yeah, if you ask them, they'll tell you that I asked them to call me Tony one night sitting around a barbecue or a grill. And I have no recollection of that actually happening, but I'm sure it was one of those things that I said something and maybe wasn't completely audible, and they ran with it, but I couldn't tell them what I had intended to say. And ever since then, yes, the Manai children call me Tony all the time.
As the audio engineer for this podcast, I just cannot imagine you saying something inaudible.
Yeah, I tend to drop the ends of my sentences, don't I?
A little bit.
I will try to endeavor to do better.
All right. Well, our topic today is a continuation of our health and wellness season, beginning with our physical health and then moving on to emotional health, kind of starting at the center of the target and moving out. And now we are in the largest rung of our emotional mental health circle, which is how do I keep myself from feeling lost and alone? Essentially, how to have a healthy relationship with the world.
Yes, the world is a very big place, and there's a lot of time when we feel when we're alone and feel lonely, and sometimes lost as well. So we're going to kind of talk about what's that all about, and what are things that we can do to try to help us navigate those times in our lives when we feel a little bit dispossessed of things that are happening. So I think first, and there's a ton of research on this, and our 2 minutes of internet research yielded a treasure trove of information. But I think we need to distinguish feeling lonely from being alone. They kind of work on independent axes. There's times when you're alone that you don't feel lonely. And this is part of what we talked about a few weeks ago, having a healthy relationship with yourself, when you can spend time with yourself and reflect on what you're doing. You're alone, but not necessarily lonely. You have yourself as company, and sometimes that feels great. Similarly, you can feel lonely, and you can be alone when you feel lonely, or you can feel lonely, as I think a lot of the adolescents do, feel lonely even when you're surrounded by people and when you're not alone. So, distinguishing between being alone and feeling alone, they can coincide, but they don't have to. And when we talk about loneliness and feeling alone, it's kind of that second thing. That doesn't mean that you're comfortably spending time with yourself. It means that you're anxiously spending time, and whether you're with yourself or not, or just yourself or not, you are, you just don't feel like there's enough support around you. And so I think that's That's important. And when you feel lonely, that can undermine your sense of self-worth, and you can feel sad, and those are not, those are, I mean, those are emotions that we're all going to feel from time to time, but they're painful, and nobody really likes it. And so, feeling lonely is one of those times in your life when you do feel lonely that you hope it's just for a short period of time. When we feel lost, I think for me, that's more of a sense of confusion, being in a place that you don't recognize, kind of in uncharted waters, and maybe not feeling the confidence that you're going to be able to navigate through the, through the current, through the situation, just because you don't really understand it well enough, and you don't really know where to go to start. So I think those are kind of the feelings and the emotions that we're talking about today, and kind of what we can do about, what kind of puts us in those positions sometimes, and then what might we be able to do, coming out of it. So maybe we'll start with, I'll ask you, Ed, what do you when you feel lost and lonely or lonely, what is that? What do you do? What is that? What does that look like?
Um, this is one of those things over the last couple years that's steered me further away from being an introvert and more into the extrovert territory. Is I go talk to someone.
Do you?
I am not wanting, very fortunately, for people who I love and care about me. So frequently, if I'm feeling lost and alone, call mom.
Yeah.
And typically, it just turns into a play-by-play of what the dog is doing at that moment. Um,
Yeah. Being groomed at the moment.
yes, but it's typically just oh, she's sticking her head in my pocket. But it certainly helps beat the loneliness. Or like seeing my friends, even just texting people helps too. But
Yeah, that's good. I think I mean, I think what that shows is that, and I think this is true for a lot of us when we do feel lonely, that there actually are people we can reach out to. It's sometimes hard to find the emotional energy to make that contact, because again, when you're feeling alone, you're typically feeling sad, and when you're feeling sad, that tends to sap energy. Emotions take physical energy away from you, and then to take action, you require physical energy, and that can be, being sad can be kind of draining. But I think, when we did, the 2 minutes of internet research. There are some excellent resources out there. The two that I found most helpful were one from Australia called reachout.com, and the other one that I found that was, I think, particularly topical and interesting and relevant to our discussion was lifehack.org. So a couple of resources there if you want to dive in further on this sort of
was
mental
it
wellness.
last week or the week before? Also from an Australian government service.
The Australians are big on mental health, apparently, and emotional health. So
Probably because everything on the freaking continent is trying to kill you.
that
So
might be true. Australia is a very dangerous place to live from a natural. The people you're sharing your natural environment with, or the animals you're sharing your natural environment with, can be very, very deadly. So that's true. But anyway, when using these resources, when you're feeling sad and alone, maybe the first thing to recognize is it's okay, because not only is it, I mean, it's normal. Everybody's going to have these moments. You're going to be alone at times, and you're going to feel lonely at times. And if you're accustomed to having a lot of people around you and engaging with a lot of people, it can really kind of throw you for a loop. You can feel, this has never been my case. I've never really minded being alone, but I have felt lonely and acutely lonely at times. And it's, it is unsettling, to say the least. It can be very difficult, but I think maybe the first thing, like in a lot of things, the first thing to do is recognize, hey, this happens. It happens to everybody. There are things and actions. There are actions you can take that can help lessen the feeling of loneliness. And if you're lost and confused, there are those things. And I think what you just described, just reaching out to somebody, somebody you trust, is maybe a good place to start. And it doesn't have to be about what you're upset about. just know that there's somebody else in the world that cares about you and is willing to take
They'll
the
tell
time.
you a play-by-play of what the dog is doing.
And then you get to learn too what the pets are up to. And pets are another thing that's you'll never be alone if you have a pet, right? They're always going to be right there with you. So um, the learning to be alone and being comfortable, kind of with yourself, will gender self-confidence, and it will give you the talent, the skills that you need to navigate those times when you do feel alone, even when you're not. So again, kind of going back to that healthy relationship with yourself from a few weeks ago. If you've got a healthy relationship with yourself, navigating those times when you feel alone are going to be a little bit easier. But the first step on this thing is just to say, hey, everybody goes through it. It's normal. I'm not. This isn't. The universe isn't punishing me. This is just how life's. This is just a cycle, and part of being alive is sometimes I'm not in sync with the world. So I think another thing to recognize is that maybe loneliness can be a signal to you that you're missing something important in your life. And this can happen as you change, as you grow through, the things that, as you acquire things, as the things that bother you, as you start to resolve those things, you're going to have new things new opportunities for you to explore your world. And it can be, if you're feeling lonely, like it's just there's something missing, explore that and try to figure out what that is, because that loneliness can actually be a signal. It's not suddenly that everybody's walked away from you. It may be that you've changed in a way and you're not willing to, or you don't find interesting enough or compelling enough the things that used to fill you and fulfill you, may not be there for you. So I think too, there's and this is kind of the flip side of loneliness. You can distract yourself with company a lot. You can find people to do things with and hang out with and keep you busy and engaged. And sometimes we use that as a way to avoid having to make important decisions or facing fears, things that are making us afraid or anxious. And this is part of that lost bit, is that spending time by yourself with yourself can expose you to the decisions that you do need to make. And if you're feeling lonely or trying to kind of avoid that, having those discussions with your own self, that can be, if you feel this undercurrent of anxiety, feeling a little, this is more about the feeling lost than feeling lonely. If you're feeling a little bit discombobulated, then you probably need some reflection time to sort of say, why am I, what's bothering me and why am I trying to avoid it? However, I'm doing that sometimes by using people as a way to distract you. Do you ever do that? And do you ever find yourself avoiding? I mean, we all kind of avoid decisions when we're not ready to make them, but what's your coping mechanism when things like that happen? Do you find yourself reaching out to people to distract yourself?
Not anymore. When I was younger, for sure. Yeah. Freshman year of college was a real low point of my life. Not a whole lot of great things were going on for me at that point in time. And I was pretty much constantly surrounded by people, but I am still in touch with two of those people. When I was like in a friend group of like somewhere around 20 people.
Yeah.
And it was definitely like none of those people really knew me. Even the two people that I'm close to now, really, we only got as close as we are the year after, because I was just burying myself in this group of friends to avoid thinking about all of the bad choices I was making, and bad situations I was putting myself in. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, for a lot of people, that freshman year is where you establish these lifelong bonds with. I mean, I've got people, there's 7 or 8 of the people that I had spent my freshman year with. 2 of them have passed away, but the rest of us are still quite close and always will be, because we had such an intense bonding time. But it can also be, I mean, this is a time, change is often a time when you feel the most alone, and, moving 2,000 miles away from home with nobody you really knew. Um, that's a big deal. And culturally, Nashville is, mm, um, fairly progressive for where you are, but it's not California, and certainly not Bay Area, California. And so, you had a lot of things happening there.
Yeah. And
Um,
then on the internal side, I wasn't going to therapy yet. I wasn't on any sort of uh, medicine for the undiagnosed mental illness I was living with at the time. Was in an abusive relationship, had a lot of unhealthy friendships. So it was just kind of a perfect storm of bad things. And
do
instead
you
of
think that those relationships, those unproductive and negative relationships, were because you felt lonely, or you felt
yes, it was definitely a vicious cycle, especially because I broke up with the abusive relationship guy early on in freshman year, and then ended up getting back together with him just because I was so desperate for familiarity and feeling
Mhm.
close to someone. Because I felt like I remember around February of my freshman year, I felt like still the only people who really cared about me were people that I knew from high school, and none of them were close to me at
Yeah.
that like proximity close to me. So I was just desperate for something, and time differences make that hard. So in order to make that not feel those differences, I would just go out with people who are not the best, and make bad choices.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think and this is a really important thing, especially for young people, is the change. It does create confusion, and you haven't had a bunch of life experiences to call on. And most of those life experiences for most people, certainly in our socioeconomic strata, um, you've had support from parents and siblings and extended family and good support, friendships and things like that. And so as a young adult, you're navigating often you're navigating things for the very first time without any previous experience to guide you, your personal experience. And so you're far more dependent on those friend groups and those people around you. And eventually you'll find your tribe, but it takes some time. And look, sometimes you'll luck into it, or not luck into it. I mean, a lot of these, when you have, in the dorm that you move into, you'll have 35 people on your floor or something like that. There's bound to be through 3, 4, 5 that you're going to bond with, and because they'll be close enough to you in terms of your values and the things you like to do and your interests, to do it. But that's not always the case, and it can, those big life changes can, without that, foundation of experience, because often for all of us, those first years of independence are exhilarating, but also terrifying in a lot of ways. And you kind of feel your way through them. And I don't know that anybody makes 100% good decisions in those kind of situations. And you start to experiment with drugs and alcohol if you haven't already. You know, you've got a lot of free time and a lot of privacy, and so sex and other things come into play as well. And these are big, powerful emotions that these things can bring, and these behaviors can combined with a sense of confusion and excitement and anxiety. There's a lot going on there. But that doesn't change. I mean, it can also change as you get older, right? I mean, it's not just that time. It's just, I think it's particularly acute at that adolescence time frame, when you're an older adolescent, younger adult. I think that's a time when everybody feels a lot of this anxiety and confusion
Well,
and
comparatively speaking, this year, I mean, I moved into my own apartment. I live alone now, which is, you would think, would be more lonely. Sometimes it is. But I was a lot more prepared for this change, where I'm now working in a career where I know nobody. I went into my job with no one I know, nobody that I am close to from college is doing something similar to me. Most of the people I'm close to from college actually went home to visit their families on spring break and got stuck there and haven't come back.
yeah.
So it's but I had tools to actually get through it this time, thankfully. So
And you had some life experiences. I mean, those lessons you learned your freshman year of college and sophomore year of college, and you've been living, in Nashville by yourself for some time, not by yourself, but away from family. And so you have had some experiences that you can draw on, and then you are seeing a therapist, and there's other tools that are available to you.
medicine.
What's that?
highly recommend medicine.
Yeah, well, yeah, if it's appropriate, for sure. You want to do what you can to help you navigate these swirling tides of confusion and anxiety and loneliness. And so, um, a lot of the stuff that these resources talk about, in terms of navigating these times when you feel this kind of stress, emotional stress, is that it all comes back to those foundational relationships, those relationships with yourself. If you like spending time with yourself, you trust yourself, you have an open dialogue, you're honest with yourself, um, you'll be in a better space to be able to handle these times. As changes, and then, as I said, there's this late adolescence, early adulthood is a time when everybody goes through changes. It's really the time that you move from learning about stuff to actually doing things and becoming self-reliant and independent. And those are, that's a really important transition, and that's a huge life transition. But there are others. When you go from when you enter a marriage and you start to have joint financial decisions, and then you talk about parenting, if if you have children. I mean, these are also big changes. And change is mostly positive. Not always, but usually, when you're acting and you're making a change, it's because you're trying to do something that you're pursuing a goal that you want that has value for you. And I think a lot of times these transitions, as I said earlier, it puts you in a situation where you don't really know for sure what the best path forward is, and it can be a little challenging to be able to kind of tackle that. New relationships are tough, and a lot of times, like your transition from audio engineering into animal care was one that you made consciously, but it probably also changed a lot of relationships. And there'll be times when you're leaving, you're kind of shedding skin, and you're changing things up, and you're leaving things behind, and you haven't fully solidified what you're moving to. And those times are when you may feel both lonely and lost. And I think it's just recognizing that this is the time, that this is what's happening, and that with a little patience and a little bit of intention, you can navigate these transitions in a way that really does get you not just back to feeling connected with people, so you're not feeling lonely, but it gives you, you gain confidence in doing what you're, in moving in the direction that you're moving, as you start to master that those directions. And if you know that, and you're patient, and you understand that this is just a process, it can help you through those times when maybe you don't feel as confident, or you're feeling, geez, like you're just out here all by yourself. And that's that's because if you don't have that confidence, then you're going to start punishing yourself. That oh, I feel crappy, I'm sad. This reminds me of other times I felt sad, and I'm just a terrible person, and this is never going to change. And that's the path to depression. That's the path to, that's a whole different kind of place. Feeling lost and lonely is normal. Feeling depressed is not really a place you really want to be, but it can, feeling a little disoriented and a little dispossessed can send you down that path. And that's, that's something you really want to avoid. So, kind of think about, the learning opportunity that you're presented when you feel this way, trying to explore why it is that's happening. But, we kind of loop back to what you were saying, which is when you feel lost and alone, and, there probably are people that you still can reach out to and connect with. And, just texting somebody. Or you can have a pet. We'll talk about that as well. What are some concrete actions when you're in these moments? What can you do? But there's a lot of reasons that people feel lost or lonely, and a lot of it it comes from change. And sometimes, most of the time, it'll be your change, the changes that you're making. But it could also be things that are happening with the people around you. Your very close friends decides to go somewhere and move. take a different job, or you just grow apart, or, that can be your life partner, that can be good friends, it can be family. We have people in our families, we have people born, we have people die. And those stresses, those are changes and they can create stresses. And, so it's not just the change that is yours alone. There's a lot of things. Life is very dynamic. It's always happening. And there are going to be these moments when you're kind of caught between the confidence of, where you're going and um, the falling away of things in your past. And so just kind of recognizing, okay, this is what's happening. This is a process. I'm capable of navigating this, and here's some, this is just kind of what it is. So, that's kind of, that's what the internet has to say about it anyway. But it is important to know that if you do sort of slide, that feeling lonely and feeling lost are normal things, but not if they go on and on and on. And at some point, or if they get worse, if you start feeling really sad, reach out, and not just to your friends and family and your acquaintances around to make those emotional connections. But if you're really feeling like, boy, this is a slog and it's not working, there's a lot of resources out there for people who are depressed, and don't take advantage of those. When it gets to be, when it starts to feel like this is just a little too much for me to cope with, because feeling lost and alone, you can that's bad, but feeling really, really depressed and like nobody in the world cares about you, when that starts to happen, call a hotline, call your doctor, call some professionals who know how to deal with this, and let them take a look at it, because maybe it is a chemical imbalance, maybe it is just something that medicine can solve, and if it isn't, then there are therapists, that work on sliding scales, so it doesn't have to be a cost thing. But there are resources available for people who are really suffering. So when you felt lonely, Ed, why? What have you ever thought? Why am I feeling lonely? Why am I lonely? I mean, because it is common for people to feel lonely at times. But why for you? What's happened in your life that has made you, put you in a place where you felt like you're kind of out there by yourself?
I had an answer and then I forgot it because Claire drooled in my face.
How did she drool in her face when she's been in your lap?
So I was doing the thing, I was scratching her back, and she kind of flings her head around. She's not going to do it. But she drools because she's a happy cat, and she just flings her head around.
I see.
Why have I felt lonely? I guess, again, human connection is really important to me, and having like a deep emotional connection with someone is really important. So yeah, I guess earlier this year when I started my new job, and I hadn't like really developed any of the friendships I had very surface level work friendships where we would joke about clients or be like, oh, like a cute puppy or something. But I couldn't be like, hey, I'm having problems in my relationship to someone quite yet. I was feeling really lonely because it was early in the pandemic. I hadn't seen any of my friends in months. Could only text people, and when I started having problems in my relationship, I was like, well, I can't talk to my boyfriend about how I don't like him, which is an exaggeration, but it was also like I didn't feel like I had anyone to really talk to close emotionally. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Is I need to be able to talk to people, and when I feel like I don't have that, it's very difficult.
Yeah, you've always needed that connection. It's been interesting to me to watch you and your sister, because you have different, still everybody has this need to be with other people. That's just a basic human need. But you always were far more, just your action. You always were touching or engaging or poking or prodding or laughing or whatever. Whereas your sister would need more alone time. You needed a lot of connection time.
I am my mother's daughter.
You are your mother's daughter in that way. Yes, that is true.
I need slightly more alone time than my mother does. But.
Yes, well, she needs zero alone, or almost zero alone time. It starts to bother her if she's not engaging with people, and she gets that. She comes by that honestly from her father. So, Jerry Lashar, the happiest man in the world when people were around him. And it didn't matter who, if he'd met him or not. He lived the life that was epitomized by, I think it was Will Rogers' quote, that there are no he has no, there are no strangers to him, just friends he has not yet met. And that was your grandfather when he was alive. He couldn't not talk to people. So,
That's
but there's lots of reasons I think people do feel lonely. And according to our internet resources, technology has been both an enabler of connection, but also a barrier to connection. Um, it's, we have access to all kinds of information, all kinds of groups, all kinds of people, um, but it's not a physical connection. And of course, we all know that people learn differently and perceive things differently. And oftentimes those people that really like and crave a physical connection, technology gets in the way of that. For me, I actually, I'm a big proponent of technology. I don't really like physical connection. So I like, I love the fact that I can text somebody. And I found as I gotten older, I'm much better with people. I don't feel as awkward as I did when I was younger, but I do like the text and the email. Those are great inventions for me. Much more comfortable writing than I am talking. But the technology that we have can both enable connection, but it can also be a barrier to connection. Everybody as an adolescent feels like they don't fit in somewhere. That continues throughout life. It's not quite as pronounced and acute as it is when you're in junior high school, but feeling like you don't fit in can make you feel lonely. And I think this is where a lot of adolescence, this lack of confidence comes from in adolescence. That and this is, virtually everybody who's ever made it through adolescence has said it was a tough time, and there were times they felt incredibly lonely because they just felt like nobody valued them, nobody saw them, nobody appreciated them, even the most popular kids. But not fitting in, not feeling like you're part of a tribe can leave you feeling very lonely, even when you're surrounded by people. And especially if you lack the confidence to try to reach out and connect with folks. And that confidence can come either because you're just an introvert and you struggle with that, or you just feel like you don't know how to start a conversation, or you feel like they wouldn't. You start to make presumptions that no, they wouldn't like me, they wouldn't want to spend time with me, and so you don't even try. But that sense of I don't belong, which is kind of what loneliness really is. Well, I guess loneliness is I'm all by myself, but I don't belong is a place that can lead you to a feeling of, I'm all by myself out here. Another thing that has become more pronounced, I think, is if you're a caregiver for somebody, that puts a lot of emotional stress on you, and it takes a lot of emotional energy to take care of somebody, and you don't really have a lot of energy left, and you're also left with a sense of nobody understands what I'm going through. And so this is the I'm alone. I'm all by myself here because nobody else can appreciate what I'm going through. So that is taking care of somebody else as a parent, as a sibling, as a child can be really, really draining, and it can leave you feeling like you're really, really alone. And so you end up saying, well, nobody really understands that I've got a sibling who has Down syndrome, or my mother is bipolar or manic depressive, or whatever. So there actually are a lot of places that you can go to get support, but it doesn't feel like it when you're in the middle of that. There's also a lot of other reasons that people can feel isolated. If you're mentally ill, you can feel very, very lonely and not see that, okay, there are solutions to this. Physical disability can leave you physically isolated, which makes it hard to connect to people. And then there's the bias and prejudice that we've seen in our society, where people who are, people of color, women, people who are the other, however, whatever group that is, are told you don't belong. And all all of those things, can lead to this feeling of loneliness and feeling of isolation, the feeling that I'm all by myself out here. And, people are social animals. We need a tribe. We need to belong. We need to feel connected to other people if we're going to be our best selves. And, all of these things, these technologies, these seeing ourselves or being told by others that we don't fit, isolated physically, can lead to this emotional isolation, and then just sometimes the way we're wired, the mental illness, the chemical imbalances and things can all lead to us feeling like, geez, what am I, why am I doing all this? I'm by myself, and it just doesn't matter. I'm always going to be alone, and those kind of feelings are very, very hard to deal with. So, Ed, how many of your friends have told you that they felt lonely in their lives?
A lot. Um, I One of my friends and I actually share this theory that people who suffer from similar mental illnesses kind of gravitate towards each other. So a lot of my friends have gone through similar struggles with anxiety, depression, PTSD, and even manic depression, like my PTSD likes to give me, um, as I have. So most of my friends have experienced or are experiencing the things that I have. In terms of loneliness, which is yet another reason why I find it so important to be very affectionate with my friends, because in the moments where I've been really low and feeling lonely and having those rough times, my friends have reached out to me, and even like they don't even know necessarily what's happening, but they'll just be like, I just wanted to tell you I love you, really appreciate you. Um, and it's those little things. It's like, yes, right.
Yeah, I mean, at any one time, 20% of young people report feeling lonely most of the time or always. And as we've talked about in previous, episodes, a lot of people feeling isolated, a lot of people feeling anxious. When we were doing our economic and job review in last season, there is a lot of anxiety, and especially among younger people. Younger people are feeling more mental illness strain than previous generations. There's a lot going on in the world, and they're not feeling confident in our collective abilities to kind of resolve these issues, or their individual abilities to navigate the world. And so lots of big systemic reasons for that. And I'm sure there are generational issues at play as well, in terms of what you're exposed to, and how much support you've had growing up, and this transition to adulthood that you guys are going, that the Zoomers are going through, going from learning about stuff to actually doing stuff. A massive transition, and that's kind of, a lot of you guys are in that moment, so that's when you're going to feel anxious, and I'd be curious to see if other generations, as they've passed those milestones in life, kind of what their anxiety levels were as well. I suspect they were higher. Certainly my anxiety, my loneliness, my, a lot of this feeling lost happened earlier in my adulthood. I find, as I'm now 60 years old, I find myself feeling pretty confident that, it's not that I've got the world figured out, but I've got my world largely figured out. I know what I like. I know what I can do. I have I think, a pretty good sense of my skills and talent, what I have to offer. I also have a sense of priorities and things like that I struggled with as a younger person. And, I feel like I feel a lot less lonely. And part of that is just, I do have a very robust network that I've built over decades, both of very old friends as well as people I'm meeting new. But knowing what I like, knowing what I respond to, makes me much more efficient at bringing in people. And I tend to curate my friends. I'm not great at keeping in touch, but I keep tabs on my friends, and I do remember things. And so when I do see people, I can reconnect in an easier way. So I think young people in particular feel more anxious because they just don't have those life experiences to help them regulate their emotions, that they sort of recognize, oh, this is just how things are. Sometimes we'll have this, and it's also, you're coinciding. You guys are going through so much change at that time of life, and you're doing it without the benefit of experience. I'm going through much less change as an older person. The world is dynamic. It's always changing. My life is always changing. But as an older person, I have a lot of experience, but the amount of changes that I'm dealing with are lower, and my experience level is much higher. And so, when I look at you and your sister and your friends and other young people who are at that time of life, it's a time of life when there's a lot happening, and you just don't have a lot of resource to call on to help you navigate that in a confident way. And so, you'll figure it out, and you'll learn your lessons along the way. And, those, that's, feeling, these big life events are often when we feel the loneliest or feeling the most lost because of everything we've talked about. There's this change creates a need for, drawing on resources that you may feel unprepared or under resourced to be able to handle the decisions you're making. So, and that can be anything. Again, as a kid, when you're leaving high school and going on to college, or moving into the workforce, leaving college or high school to go into the workforce, or you're joining the armed services. But it's also personal, right? I mean, your parents could be splitting up. You could be splitting up with your partner. Your friends could be going in different directions. There's a lot of things that could be happening, and the probability that those things are happening are when you're younger than when you're older. And so I do think that there is this sense of, or this confidence comes as you grow older because you have more life experience, but there's also less change that you need to make, because as you grow older, you add the things in your life that give it meaning, and you never quite get there. I mean, I still have a lot of stuff that I do that I'm kind of indifferent about, or I'm pretty ambivalent about, but there's very little that I hate, that I really dislike, and there's more every year that I like. As I go through life, you add the things that give you joy or give you satisfaction, that give you fulfillment, and you stop the things that cause you pain and ache, and then you try to crowd out with the things that are good, try to crowd out those ambivalent or negative things with the things that are good. And as you get older and you start to add those hobbies and those relationships and those, you choose your life and you choose your path. And as you start to fulfill more of those goals with your life, you feel happier and more satisfied, and less lonely, and less lost. So we've already talked a little bit about how you've managed loneliness. At times you reach out to people, which is a great way to do that. And you don't have to talk to people about how you feel, but if you do, I think you'll find that people are going to be pretty receptive, especially with somebody you trust, pretty receptive, and may be able to tell you, yeah, I've been through that. I remember how that feels. And if nothing else, they'll be able to say, yeah, I feel you. I understand what you're going through, and I can appreciate that.
One of my methods with my friends when I know they're going through a hard time, and it's especially in things that I can't relate to, that I can't like empathize with, but I can sympathize with.
Yeah.
I'll reach out and I'll just be like, hey, I just want you to know I'm here. And if you just want to come over and watch a movie and eat ice cream and not think about hard things in your life for a little bit, let's do it.
Yeah.
And that usually helps. And also in the times where my friends have invited me over to do that, we almost always watch a movie, eat ice cream. And then afterwards, I'm like, also, here's all the stuff.
Yeah.
And then you feel like you're able to talk to someone about it. So if you don't want to talk to someone, or if you are on the flip side and you're the person who's watching your friend struggling and you don't think they're ready to talk to you, you can just offer to hang out quietly with them. And that kind of opens up that door.
Yeah. And even if you don't have somebody around to be able to do that with, oftentimes just going out to a coffee shop or somewhere. Your mother likes to do this when she's particularly, when she's feeling anxious or sad or whatever, she'll go to a coffee shop, because just the energy around you and seeing other people, and and she will interact with people. I mean, she's like her father. She can't help interacting with people, and just talking to the barista or talking to the person at the next table sometimes, even though it's just an innocuous conversation without a lot of emotional depth, it's a connection, and that can help you when you're feeling like you're out by yourself. That can help.
That is one of the things I would do, obviously pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I lived up the street from a coffee shop throughout most of college, actually all of college, because there was one on campus too. And especially when I was working on my thesis, which is a very lonely process.
Yeah.
um, I would just go to the coffee shop and work there. And even though I was alone, it was very much like the feeling that described it to other people was a reminder that I exist in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, and it feels nice just to be out in the world. And you're like, right, there's a whole place here. It's not
Yeah.
just me and the thesis, which was nice.
Yeah. When you feel lonely, you feel like you're by yourself, right? That you're I'm out here all by myself. And if you're in a coffee shop or a store or someplace, you're
Right.
not by yourself, physically by yourself. I mean, you can still feel, as I said at the beginning, you can feel emotionally lonely in the middle of a crowd, but sometimes being in the crowd will just remind you that, hey, the world's going on. There's a lot of things happening. There's an energy there as people are interacting, and maybe there'll be an opportunity for a little bit of interaction. Um, Another thing to do is think about something that you like to do, and do that. So, if you like to be outside, go for a hike. If you like um, to read, you know, pick up a book and read. Do something that gives you fulfillment, gives you satisfaction, gives you joy.
That was one of the things I found about astrology. I got so involved in astrology because I liked learning about it and I liked using it as a tool for understanding myself better. But frequently, when I was like, I just don't know what to do, I would pick up one of my books and be like, well, let's look at some weird placements in my chart and
Yeah,
see if I can do this, which was nice.
yeah, and by engaging your mind in that way, or your body, depending on your interest, there, you will give yourself energy because you like to do this thing, and that can help you elevate your mood and make you feel good. The next one is get a pet. Look what happens when you have a pet. They crawl all over you. And our audio intern Claire there with Addie is, I think,
Being
one
her
of the
pet.
things, one of the things that I've been very pleased and very happy as you've had to navigate this COVID thing by yourself in a place where your nearest relatives, blood relatives, are five hours away. That you have a pet that you can share affection and get affection back and
Yeah,
distract you having somebody, some other being with which to share your life is an important, or can be an important way to mitigate some of the loneliness and that sense that you are out there by yourself. When you have a pet, you're not. There's somebody right there that needs you and lets you know, typically, unless it's a fish or a cat, let you know, hey, I need you. Um,
cat. One of the things also I found with having a pet and mental illness, one of those overlaps. Taking care of her helps me take care of myself because I can't skip giving her breakfast or dinner. And so when I'm having the days where I'm like, it's fine if I just don't eat something, I'm like, oh, well, I'll have to get up to feed Claire anyway. I'll just eat a bowl of cereal. And now she's on every other day meds, which reminds me to take my meds. So little things. It's a very easy like redirection to take care of yourself while you're also taking care of something else.
Well, and the fact of taking care of somebody else tells you that you're important.
Mhm.
And sometimes, we talked about earlier, when you're feeling sad, a lot of times you start to punish yourself and tell you that you're not worth it, that you're unworthy. And a pet, requires you to, if you got a dog, you got to get them out a couple times a day, right? Got to get the exercise. The
You have a
cats, they
cat,
need to be fed.
headbutt you.
I'm sorry.
If you have a cat, she'll come headbutt you.
Yes. I mean,
Or you
the thing is
you.
that they let you know that you matter, that you have worth because you have to take care of them. And a pet is a great way. And a lot of older people find this as they lose their life partners. Um, a pet won't replace a life partner, but it will help you feel less lonely because that pet needs you. And that pet needs you to take action and take care of it, and that makes you feel needed. And we all want to feel that.
I call her my roommate.
Your roommate, yeah, exactly. Another thing to do is to reach out. We have online. We talked about technology being a barrier sometimes to connection, but it can be it can be a tool. And this is where when you talked about your friends who had left at spring break and weren't able to come back. You've got technology that we didn't have when I was in school, and so it's a way to keep connections alive. It's not the same as seeing somebody in person, but it can help you keep keep that relationship in line. And alternatively, joining a club of some sort around an interest that you have can be a great way to connect yourself with other people that share an interest of yours. And you get kind of the double. It increases the odds that you're going to have a connection or be able to make an important connection with somebody because you share interests already. But that's another way. And then you're doing it for somebody else. Bless you.
Thank you.
And so so that's something. Another thing, and we talked about this earlier when we were talking about the physical health. If you're feeling depressed, get out and go for a walk. That'll elevate your blood rate, your heart rate, get blood moving through you, get oxygen moving through you. And just sometimes just being outside, even if you're not doing a strenuous workout, just walking or taking a hike or something, a gentle hike, being out and smelling the flowers and the trees and the feeling the wind and the maybe it's raining, maybe it's sunny, whatever it is. Move your body, and that'll increase your energy, and your energy can bring back some of that some of that sense of, hey, I'm a living, breathing person here in the world, and I'm in this world. I exist in this world. So those are all different tools and techniques. When we feel the inevitable loneliness, when we feel like things that we're all by ourselves, those are some of the things that you can do to try to lessen that feeling, that sadness that feeling often brings. And again, if this is serious, like you can't get out of bed at all, you're not taking care of yourself. This is kind of going back to our episode a few weeks ago on relationship with yourself. How do you know when you're not feeling, when you don't have a healthy relationship, and it's when you're not taking care of yourself and when you're beating yourself up mentally. When you're in that kind of space, reach out to professionals, because that's not the norm. That's not just normal loneliness and feeling a little bit underconfident that you're going to be able to handle whatever's coming up next. That's a sign of depression, a sign of deep sadness, and you might need some professional help to help you navigate that. So that's what we have today. You're going to feel alone sometimes. You're going to feel lost sometimes. Anticipate it. Know that it's normal. Recognize it when it happens. So when you're going through it, you're not. It doesn't. You know what's going on. In other words, work intentionally to understand it. So you need to spend some time trying to figure out, why do I feel sad? Is this a passing thing, or is and then what can I do to resolve it? What are some of the things that I can do that can lessen the pain that I'm feeling in the short term and move me through this transition so I get back to an equilibrium with connections that are meaningful to me and fulfill me. And so remaining patient and accepting it can help you stay kind of on an even keel without spinning out of control or spinning into deeper sadness and depression. And then if you do get there, though, there are resources, by all means, use them. And so that's it. So do we have any follow-up items this week? Nothing like the worship of Miles Standish?
No, nothing like that.
Have you told anybody about naked time as a way to manage things?
I almost did, and then I didn't.
Oh, why not? Oh, try it next time. Just be bold and say it. Yeah.
I just didn't want to think about that. I was like, you know what? Also, the person I almost told about it listens to our podcast. So I was like, she'll get there.
I see. Excellent. Okay. Very good. All right. Well, speaking of our podcasts, Addie, what is our topic next week?
Our topic next week is, how do I keep myself healthy overall? So how do we incorporate all these things we talked to into your daily life? And I think that's our ultimate episode for this season.
It's the penultimate episode. It is. Okay. Yeah, we only have 2 episodes left in this season. And next week, we hope we'll be doing it together here in sunny, hopefully be sunny California.
We can do the next 2 episodes because I'll be flying out on Sunday. So
that's true. So maybe we'll close out our season with the next 2 weeks with in-person visits, in-person broadcasts. So wonderful. Very, very good.
Yep. All right. Well, you can find us on awkwardfamilyconversations.com or on Twitter at awkwardfamilyc1 and everywhere else, YouTube, Facebook, Stitcher, Apple, Google Podcasts, all of the places at Awkward Family Conversations. Again, please follow the Twitter. It's very fun to watch Rhett accidentally tweet from it frequently. I don't know if we had any this week, but
didn't do it this week. I've been good.
I got some good audio intern pictures though, so you will have to log in to post
All right,
those.
awesome, very good.
All right, well, let us know what you think. Keep the questions and suggestions coming through DMs, comments, and indeed text messages. Are like what, 6 listeners?
I think, well, it depends. We've had up to 14 sometimes, so it's hard to know.
13. All right, well, we'll see you next week. Love you, Dad.
I love you, Ed, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in person. It's been more than a year since we've been able to be together, so I'm excited about that, and we'll see you next week.